So here we are. I'm wondering if this is one of the last Mondays we'll be meeting at my place. You're welcome to continue, but I think we might make the big move to Chen's place. Yeah. Mm. So I was happy to spend a couple hours with some of you on Saturday in Tel Aviv Park by that nice lake with the motorboats, and at least there's no water skiing, and it just reinforced the strength of having actual physical presence, and how these type of community Sangha is a living thing. And in the first learning that was done, Daniel read something to do with finding good examples in your friends and about friendships, and role models, and some of the role models that were talked about, there was a lay person and there was some nuns, and how they were described as being very virtuous people. So I wanted to develop that theme a little more and talk about this really central aspect of being on a path where you're trying a path of perfection. You're trying to perfect yourself, and you're trying to develop a mind that has only wholesome thoughts and has abandoned unwholesome thoughts. It's a path we're on, trying to cultivate that perfection, that wisdom. And what's really clear from the basic refuge that we take in the Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, is that it's not, even though there are many times when you have solo practice, you can't do it alone. So, number one, the kind of main help here is originated from the Buddha. So he's kind of what you call the first spiritual friend on this path, the first mentor and teacher, the doctor, the chief surgeon. And the theme here, though, is about spiritual friendship and what that means in terms of how we live our lives, and in terms of a community like a Sangha, or not your formal community, the life you live in the world you live in day by day, and how the value of what's called Kalyāṇa Mitra, or Mitata in Pali, and Mitra in Sanskrit, which is spiritual friends, friends on the path. These are friends on the path. And how it's a real important value. And when we're aware of it, we start to cultivate it. So there's cultivating friendships, but then there's cultivating Kalyāṇa Mitra, which is, cultivating and supporting friends on the path, and receiving their help as well. So I want to look at that, what that means. Who are these friends? And what does it mean to be that type of friend? Because in one of the sutras that's very well known, the Upada Sutra, Ananda says to the Buddha, he says, half of the holy life is admirable friendship and admirable companionship and admirable camaraderie, which is like trust and friends. And then, it's well known, the response that the Buddha gave, which was, don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. Admirable friendship, or Kalyāṇa Mitra, is actually the whole of the holy life. And he explains a little. He says, when a monk has admirable people in his life as his friends, companions, and comrades, he will develop and nurture the Noble Eightfold Path. So, having these friends in our life is seen as like essential and an important element in pursuing the path, the Eightfold Path. And it's a little different than the Sangha, which is, the Sangha of ordained people. And then in another sutra, if we're wondering what does it mean if you're not ordained, if you're not a bhikkhu or bhikshuni, is as a lay person. The Buddha also talked, and I'm starting with a couple of the sutras, and I want to then go further afield. So he gave a reference to this in terms of lay people, and this is how it's described in the Digajanu Sutra, where he says, and what is meant by Kalyāṇa Mitra, admirable friendship? This is the case, he says, where a lay person in whatever town or village, a lay person, wherever he may dwell, spends his time with householders or the children of householders, young or old. It's young or old, who are advanced in virtue. He talks with them, engages with them in discussions. He emulates their great conviction in those who have great conviction, and the great virtue in those who have great virtue, and the great generosity in those who are great in generosity, and great discernment in those who are great discernment. This is called admirable friendship for a lay person. So a lay person, seeks out and goes and finds people young or old, who have great virtue, who have great conviction, meaning strong faith in the way. It's not blind faith, because it's faith based on they have faith, they have virtue, they have generosity, and they have discernment, the ability to choose wisely and know the difference between right and wrong. So discernment, knowing the difference between right and wrong. Conviction, having that faith based on, your experience. Generosity, which is one of the paramitas. And virtue, of course, keeping all the precepts and having right action, right livelihood, right speech. So those four things, a lay person then seeks out in the people he's drawn to, and it says he emulates it. And that's one of the words that came up in the talk on Saturday that I heard was the word to copy. So it's to emulate it, meaning you see this as a good thing. So it's kind of, you're learning by example. Let's put it that way. You're learning by example. So he's engaged in instruction and discussion, but the layperson is emulating. Because you may not have that conviction, but you're going to try to somehow live a life in a way. You may not naturally be generous as you see in the spiritual friend, but you're going to emulate it anyway. You do it enough and it becomes yours. Right? So that's what to emulate means. It's like, you repeat these actions and then they become your own kind of nature. Right? And you see that and you admire it in somebody else. One of the Zen patriarchs, the ancestors, he said that when if there's an old man who needs instruction, I'll give it, and if there's a young child who is wise, I will learn from him. So this is kind of like young or old, whoever it is, you will find something that will help you on your path. So this is what a lay person here, and what a lay person does, and how he defines spiritual friendship. That you go on, you're visiting these people. And in another section, friendship is a real important thing, because in another section, the Buddha gives a talk in this sutra called Sigalovada. And I guess there was this person he was talking to who was a young householder, he says, because he keeps addressing it to this young householders. And I think his name was Sigalo. And so it's a Sigalovada Sutra. And the Buddha defines to the young householder 4 types of friends, 4 types of good friends, 4 types of good friends. It says here, these 4 young householder should be understood as warm-hearted friends. Okay, so what are these 4 friends? He says there's the helper, the one who helps you. And each of the 4 is divided into 4 qualities that they do. Okay, the one who helps you protects you when you're vulnerable. Okay, like if you're kind of in a vulnerable place, will give you some protection either in words or body. Protects your wealth. That's an important thing as a lay person. If you're going to spend foolishly or make a bad purchase, your friend probably should say, you don't want to do that. That's just part of the protection, a good friend. You're a monk, you don't have to worry about that. Gives refuge to you when you're in danger or afraid. And we can understand these things as a good friend. This is just the first type of friend, the helpful friend. The helpful friend. When you're afraid, gives refuge. Like, you can call this person when you're afraid. In the middle of the night, you can call this person and she'll say, it's okay. Thank you. I'm here. So that's the refuge of when you're in danger or afraid. And the last aspect of the helping friend is he or she will sacrifice his or her well-being for you, for your good. So that's just the helping one. And then we have the next type of friend is the one who endures, the one who lasts. In the interesting way it's talked about. And again, these are lay people, and the talk is being given to a householder, in the very skillful way, because this is the way we deal with people often. And so the enduring friend is, he says first, somebody who shares his secrets, the secret parts of him. Someone who will keep your secrets, who won't, you have things you need to confide. He or she won't, tell others if you tell him or her something. Does not leave you when you have misfortune. There's a saying in English called a fair weather friend. Meaning when the friend's there when the weather is fair. And when the weather turns, nowhere to be found. So a friend who's there when you're having a hard time, right? And we'll give you assistance, more assistance than you need. That's one who endures. Someone who will give you more assistance than you need. You need some help, he or she will give you more. That's the friend who endures. Thirdly, there's the friend who is sort of the mentor, teacher, or parent, the one who gives good advice. Okay, this is a friend who gives good advice. This is the fourth one. So we're the helper, the friend who helps, the friend who lasts, who stays around, the friend who gives good advice. And here it said that it's described in 4 ways. He will try to stop you from doing wrong things, from doing bad things. You know? That's pretty important. You know, you want to accept your friend, but you also want to give input when you think she or he is going to cause harm to himself or to others. You know? You want to discourage from doing something wrong or harmful. And on the other side, the second aspect is you want to encourage him or her from doing good things. So someone who is encouraging, you know, like, yeah, you should do this. This will be good for you. That'll be really good for you. You know, that's the second thing. The third aspect of the friend who gives good advice is sometimes sharing with you things that you don't know. Whether that's a teacher, or even as a friend, sharing with you something that you don't know that may be helpful. And the fourth thing is points out the path to heaven or liberation. It says, pointing out the path. So here we see it's very clearly Kalyāṇa Mitra, that you know, it's kind of saying this is going to be harmful if you do this. This is going to be helpful if you do this. You may want to learn these things. This is a good thing. This is a good talk. This is a good book. This is a good retreat. This is a good place to visit, you know. And stay on the path. Stay on the path. That's a good friend, okay? And that's the third type of friend, the friend who instructs. So the friend who helps you out when you need help, the friend who's there, he stays, she stays, you know, even when you're feeling miserable. You know? And all of us have times of being what's called a difficult person. The friend who instructs, you know, I need some input here. I need some advice. I don't know what to do. And you can trust that friend to, you know, probably give you some direction. And the fourth friend is the compassionate friend, the friend who sympathizes, the compassionate friend. And the way the Buddha teaches us in 4 ways is doesn't rejoice in your misfortune, obviously, and delights in your fortune, right? That's called sympathetic joy. Okay, like I'm so happy that you're doing well. That is great. You know, and I'm really sorry, so sorry that you're experiencing pain right now. And the other 2 aspects of the compassionate friend is restrains others from speaking badly of you and praises those who speak well of you. Right? It's interesting those even need to be said, but it's true. You know, it's true because that's getting to the heart of what many friendships are based on, which is right speech. Right speech. Friendships are made or unmade based on good or bad words that have been spoken. You know, We lose a friend not only because they do an action that is harmful, but they said something, or we heard from someone else that they said something. So right speech is really one of the pillars of spiritual friendship. What to say, and here, the friendships here, the Buddha was explaining very clearly that it's very much about what you say, when to say it, and how to say it. And of course, the why is because we want to help you. That's what a good friend is. A good friend wants you to be your very best. No strings attached, not because I'm getting something good out of it, right? But being a friend is an end in itself. That is the reward. It's not because you're going to then, because I'm around for you, I know you'll be around for me when I need. Helping is an end in itself. That is its reward. So as we see here, and we can understand this without much, depth involved, is that when the Buddha is talking about these four friends, the helper, the one who endures and sticks around and does not abandon you, okay? The one who instructs and gives good advice, and the one who's compassionate, they are all four aspects of one friend, right? They all exist as one friend. Even though it's talked about as four different friends, there are aspects that we want to cultivate, and what we want to seek out as well. So when we're seeking out friendships, is this person, can I rely on them to really help me when I'm stuck and in a really bad place? Will they be around? Can I turn to them for some advice? And it's compassion there, it's compassion there. And compassion is non-judgment when it comes to the difficulty I'm having. That's the non-judgment. And that's why part of the compassionate aspect of the friend is he doesn't suffer people talking badly or, talking about you, because that's kind of not really accepting. Like, we don't need to say anything about it. It is what it is. She's going through what she's going through. Or we're really happy for her. So these are not so much, not only, we have to see it both ways. Not only is it sort of our ideals of what we're looking for in friendships, but what we want to be as a friend. This is not only what we should be looking for in friends, but what we should offer as a friend, as a spiritual friend, a friend on the path. That we should, as we saw, the one who instructs and gives good advice. And remember, these are aspects of you, of the friend, of what it means to be a friend, is the one who points out the path of liberation. So you kind of always remembering that, and maybe with Sangha members and people who are into the Dharma and stuff, you can talk about it in that way. But the challenge then for us is how to translate being these four types of friends, out in the world with all types of people. With all types of people, we want to be more helpful. We want to be there when the going gets tough. We want to have some wisdom that we can share. And we want to care about, the pain and rejoice in the joy. So those aspects of what it means to be a good friend is something that we want to translate and express in our lives and cultivate that as an awareness, because we take friendship a little for granted. We have sort of ideas of what it means to be a good friend, but by studying this and looking at this, we can start to refine it. We can refine it like we refine mindfulness, like, we're noting and we're letting go and we're breathing and we're, have different techniques to cultivate concentration. Just like with right effort, how in right effort we have, we really, it's defined very clearly that right effort means, excuse me, to not allow and to stop unwholesome thoughts from arising. To, if you have that urge and you notice in your mind, the other aspect of, there's 4 aspects of right effort. And then to notice that there are unwholesome thoughts, ill will or boredom or judgment or restlessness or, doubt and anger and all sorts of things, and jealousy and envy and whatever you may be thinking, and whatever feelings and thoughts you may have, to notice that they've arisen, and when they've arisen, to not develop them. That's the second aspect of right effort. The third aspect of right effort is to arouse wholesome thoughts of the Brahma Viharas of compassion and kindness and love and joy, sympathetic joy and equanimity, and to cultivate those, and also dana and generosity and patience and virtue and all the paramitas. Those are wholesome thoughts that we can have aroused. And so we want to arouse those which have not yet aroused. And those that have aroused, we want to maintain. So those are the 4 aspects. The negative things, we don't want to happen. We want to stop them happening. The ones that are happening, we want to, limit and stop happening. The wholesome and good things in our mind, we want to awaken. And the ones that are there, we want to maintain. That is actually what's called right effort, traditionally. Now that is kind of, if you were to summarize what a good friend is doing, that's what a good friend is doing. A good friend is trying to, approach you with the right effort and to help you in your effort. Your effort is to become, as I said, a pure human being, a perfected sentient being, that your mind has been released of all negative karma, and that you have fully developed the wonderful, wholesome qualities of mind. And so to do that, though, takes a lot of effort. It takes effort to maintain, to awaken and maintain those wholesome states, and to recognize the unwholesome ones and to let them pass and not cultivate those. So good friends are helping each other with that noble effort. And that's really that effort is pretty much like what we're doing in life, although we're taking a lot of different tools and detours to do that. So good friends are here to help us with that effort and to make sure it's right effort and not wrong effort. And so when we're aware of that, and then we see, okay, well, how can I help you with your right effort and wrong effort? And how can I help myself? And also don't forget, you need to be your own friend. You need to be your own friend. I just need to say that twice. Because we sometimes miss that point. The Kalyāṇa Mitra, in the same way that we're talking about with metta and karuna, with loving kindness and compassion, the first base is oneself. So too, you have to think like, I'm going to be, I'm going to help myself. I can depend on my mind. I will be there for myself. I have wisdom that I can share with myself. I can trust and I can find it. I can find the truth within. That's the third friend. And I really care about, I care about my suffering and my happiness. I care about it enough to keep the effort going. So that's, I think a point I want to emphasize. Be your own friend. Explore how those 4 aspects of being a friend can relate to the way you you are with yourself and the way you are with others. And not that they're all equal, because different people and different relationships require different levels of those expressions of friendship. So what I want to expand this to a little bit, though, is when we are talking about our spiritual community and friendships. And we sort of said, the original friend, and again, if there's any question or anything you want to say, just use that little thumb thing and say something. So the Buddha is our, the first friend and teacher and mentor and compassionate one. Okay, all those friends together. And a human being. So it's got the friend aspect there. Definitely compassionate. All the teachers, so we have the Buddha Dhamma Sangha that we are taking refuge in, and the Buddha is that friend, that model friend. Then the teachers who have passed on instruction, and the teachers can be teachers that were Buddhist teachers or non-Buddhist teachers, meaning also your parents and brothers and sisters and people who instructed you and taught you things you don't know. That's one of the aspects of a friend, of the mentor friend, of the friend who gives you advice, is, taught you things you didn't know that you needed to know. And even if it seems something physical, like how to tie my shoes, I needed to know that. That helped me on my path, right? So we can have gratitude in a spiritual way in terms of our path of perfection to all the teachers that we've met throughout our lives. And those teachers were, some of them were Buddhist, some of them were Jewish, some of them were in elementary school and kindergarten. Yeah. And so it's important to then recognize that those teachers were also teachers on the path, on your path, helping you with your right effort. Furthermore, though, and this is where it gets kind of interesting in a certain way that is a big challenge, is that we're going to meet along the way many people who do not seem to be expressing those four qualities of friendship, but may in fact be expressing the polar opposite. So rather than helping you with your right effort, they seem to express, if we go and visit, if as a layperson, as the Buddha suggested, you go visit somebody who has like a strong conviction in the path and in awakening, and as really great virtue and great discernment and great generosity. Well, we can meet people who are and have daily interactions with people who seem to be expressing very strongly the opposite of those qualities. Greed and lust and strong desire and quick to anger. These types of things, unable to discern right from wrong. And how do I deal with that? I'm not going to emulate that. As he said, I'm not going to emulate. I don't want to copy that. Well, so how do I deal with that? And so later on, the two teachers I want to bring into this discussion, Nagarjuna and Shantideva, talk just about this. Because if our spiritual friends are only the people who we actually meet when we're sitting here, then we're going to have to extend this meeting all week. It's going to be a long meditation meeting. But we're going to have to find spiritual friendship outside of, our Zoom meeting. And it may be with people who actually don't have the intention to be our spiritual friends. But here's the thing. We have to have the intention to be theirs. That's where it's hard, is to maintain the intention to be a spiritual friend to somebody who doesn't want to be your spiritual friend. That doesn't mean I'm going to go to someone and say, I want to purify your mind. Please let me help you. In fact, it happened to me today. And not that I said I want to purify your mind, but I'll give you a good example, because it happens every day if you live here. So I went to visit, and Jonathan, I hope he's somewhere here. He's here, because I went to the Zen Center in Jerusalem to check out the garden, because Jonathan gave me a report that it was in pretty bad shape. Because we haven't been there and done anything to it, and the water went off for a while. So I thought, okay, I'd do my favorite job, which is like raking. I went to go rake. And you know where it is. It's by the Prime Minister's residence, right? And for some reason, I think they're even more alert, but not in a meditative way. But they're like more alert now than ever. I don't know why. It must have something to do with, I don't know, court cases or something. But so I went in the garden. It's like right there where the building is beside the guard post. So you have to pass through the guard post to get in the building. So I go through there and I get my rake and I'm raking the thing. And the guard comes, of course, and he says to me, like, who are you and what are you doing here? And he was new. I hadn't seen him before. And I said, I'm part of this group. And what's your role there? Well, I help out. And I'm doing the garden now. So I'm like working on the garden. He says, yeah, you're in charge of the garden. And he asked all sorts of questions. And what's this group for? And everything. And I said, it's Zen Buddhism. And he was like, what? What is that? And I'm like, Zen Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. I mean, I wasn't going to. I said to him, you should check it out on Wikipedia. Zen Buddhism. And he said, no, I don't want to. And he took my ID and walked away and called somebody and had my ID for like 10 minutes and then came back and gave it to me. And that was the end of the conversation. And I wrote to Jonathan and I said, he asked, did you meet anyone while you were there? And I said, yeah, I met the person who was in the house and I also met the guard, but I don't think he was very interested in Dharma. And Jonathan, of course, wisely said, yeah, well, not yet. But but I realized like that I wasn't there to change his mind. He wasn't gonna suddenly, be interested in any path, any Dharma, because I'm there raking and I happen to be involved with it. But he at that time, and I know this is kind of weird to say, but because I felt, naturally I felt a bit defensive and I felt some resistance and some irritation and annoyance because they see us there all the time. They always kind of come in and walk around and do stuff. But I realized, and I'll read the passage from Shantideva about this and Nagarjuna, where, he was my spiritual friend. I wasn't there to be his spiritual friend. He came into my life. He was my difficulty. And therefore, he was the mirror to my mind at that time. He was holding up a mirror saying, I'm going to push some of your buttons and let's see how you react, And that's how he was being my friend at that time. Not because he intended to be my friend or to help me, but he was doing something I needed. to help me on my path. He was inadvertently, that means unintentionally, he was pointing the path of liberation to me by causing some friction within my mind. He was pointing the path of liberation. He was saying, this is what you need to deal with if you want to develop wholesome thoughts. These thoughts that are arising in your mind of irritation and annoyance, those things you actually have to notice, care for, and say goodbye to. And I'm here to help you notice that. Because if you were just raking the leaves nice, whistling all by yourself and enjoying the garden, you wouldn't have this opportunity. That doesn't mean I should be seeking out challenging and upsetting situations. That's, masochistic. No. But there's a famous saying in Zen, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. At this point, that young guard, who couldn't care less about my interests, was the teacher I needed at that time. If we start to see our interactions in that way as being spiritual teachers who come into our lives at that moment to transmit a teaching we need, then the difficulties we encounter take on a different purpose. It's there to work on your right effort. Can I abandon this unwholesome thought? Can I stop a new one from arising? Can I cause to arise a wholesome thought? And can I maintain that wholesome thought? That right effort, people are coming into my consciousness as opportunities to work on that. And they hold mirrors up to my mind so that I can see where I'm at. Because if I didn't have that friendship, that network, and that community of sometimes strangers who are spiritual friends, how would I know? How would I know? Mm-mm. So let me share with you a couple of passages from Nagarjuna, first of all, who is the 2nd century, probably the greatest known Buddhist kind of thinker and a philosopher, at least in Mahayana. And he created what was called the middle way, Madhyamika way, and this is the way in between of extremes, which is pretty much what the Buddha was teaching as well. And Nagarjuna developed it in a certain direction. But I want to share something with you. The question was asked. He asked the question: How can you attain? How can you realize equanimity? That was his question. And we usually think of equanimity as like a meditative state of, kind of pure acceptance, non-judgment, non-reactivity, and, abandoning attachment and aversion. And in that nice sweet spot, you've got equanimity. You can notice things come and go. All right. And here's the interesting reply that that Nagarjuna gives. It's in a question and answer form, this discussion he gives. He says, this equanimity, this evenness, is not from concentration, samadhi, which we often think because, we do it in meditation. It's the absence of hostility towards all beings. And thanks to this absence, we consider other people with good feelings. We consider others with the feelings that we would have for our mother, our father, or our spiritual friends. And he says, in the course of innumerable generations, meaning throughout all time, all beings, this is a Mahayana concept of, constant, endless rebirths. And if everybody's reborn and it's happened endlessly, then at some point you've had a different and equal relationship with each person and each creature that's alive. If time went back endlessly and rebirth has been going on endlessly, then at some point everybody has been your mother, father, and spiritual friend. And so this is what he's relating to in this approach, where he says, in the course of innumerable generations, all beings have been one spiritual friend. Father, mother, elder brother, elder sister, younger sister, and relative. Furthermore, according to the true nature of the dharmas, there is no father or mother, no elder or younger brother, but people who are caught in the error of self and believing in their existence of self. And thus, we have the question of father and mother and these relationships of father, mother, elder, and younger brother. Therefore, it's not a lie when you consider somebody as you would with the same feelings that you would have for a spiritual friend, father, or mother. So this is a remarkable, different way. This is quite different, but connected, but quite different from saying like, these people are here as my teachers, but like they're separate from me. They're my teachers, they're part of my Sangha. They're my enlightened Sangha, even if they don't know it and they don't intend it. That's how I can relate to them. I'm relating to them as the types of spiritual friend, not only what they're giving to me, but what I can give to them. That's my challenge. Here he's saying, Nagarjuna is saying it on a much more sort of universal level of saying that two things. One is that throughout all time, everybody has been everything to everyone. Everybody has been everything to everyone. So given that, this person who seems like a total, nutcase, it has been your spiritual friend, and you can have those feelings for him or her. Right? And you should arouse those feelings for him or her, because you do owe them something. And the other aspect he talks about is in terms of the emptiness of, of self. That if self is ultimately empty of these, these concepts, because these concepts of, father, mother, spiritual friend, and elder brother, younger brother, and sister are, beliefs we have and concepts we have in self, then, you can come back to it and you can say, if it's empty, then it's not crazy to say, okay, well, now we have these conventions, and as a convention, you can also be a spiritual friend of mine. Mm-hmm. So those are the two aspects of understanding all beings as, your spiritual friend, that they have been at some point, and that their self as being, say a difficult person is empty of that, ultimately. And I want to finish with a couple of verses from Shantideva, who he was also an Indian Buddhist teacher in the 8th century. And I read from him in the past few weeks from the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And I was talking about being a bodhisattva. And this relationship then, not only to other beings, but Shantideva brings it very specifically to the enemy or the difficult person. The enemy or the difficult person. So in metta and in compassion, one of the stages, the 4th stage, is extending it to the difficult person or the enemy. And that's a difficult practice, and it's done, in short amounts. And what we want to do in that cultivation of loving kindness and compassion to someone who's difficult is start to shift the relationship in our minds a little bit. You know, we may not be actually helping them outside, but we're helping our own minds to stop having a lot of judgment and anger towards them. And that's you know, one of the big directions and benefits of loving kindness, compassion, meditation, metta and karuna meditation, is when you direct it to a difficult person or the enemy. You know, I mean, we don't have the pretense that, yeah, I'm helping that person be free of suffering. No, you're helping yourself being free of the suffering of the anger you have towards them. That's what you're helping. And that's an important thing, okay? Because that's an unwholesome thought that we want to release, let go of. And we want to create the wholesome thought that this difficult person should be, you know, happy and free. And that's being a good friend. That's being a good friend. You know, that's the fourth aspect of being the compassionate friend. So we can do that in meditation, you know, and we can do it just by contemplating these four aspects of friends. But back to what Shantideva says is, you know, if Nagarjuna goes and he says, like, everybody, if you want to have real equanimity, you have to see everybody as your spiritual friend. You know, that's true equanimity. That's true evenness of mind. You know, you can be really concentrated and have good concentration in your meditation, and then you walk down the street and everybody's bothering you. You know, it's just not, that's not equanimity. Equanimity has to relate to other people. It has to relate to people who, you know, push your buttons, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to suddenly, if you develop this equanimity, that they're not going to push your buttons. You're not going to feel anything. You will, but you'll know that it's coming from you, not from them. You see the difference? Your being upset is yours, and you start to own it. It's not their fault. That's a big thing, okay? And I'm not saying they're not responsible for harm that they cause, but for your reaction, they're not responsible, okay? Shantideva, so Nagarjuna takes it to like everybody, and Shantideva goes to the difficult person. And this is what I want to share with the time that's remaining. So just thank you for your patience. This is in the verses from 101 and onward from the second chapter of the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Those who wish to cause me suffering are like Buddhas bestowing waves of blessing. Why should I be angry with them? If, due to my own shortcomings, I am not patient with this enemy, then it is only I who am preventing myself from practicing in order to gain more merit. Therefore, just like a treasure appearing in my house, without any effort on my part to obtain it, you know, I did nothing. He came. I didn't invite him, and he came. I should be happy to have my enemy, for he assists me in my conduct of awakening. I should be happy that this guy came around, because he's helping me to behave in an awakened way. I am able to practice patience with him, and so he is worthy of being given the very first fruits of my patience, for he is the cause of it. Yeah? I practice patience with this person. He should receive my patience because he's the cause of my patience. Without him, I wouldn't have anyone to practice with. Thus, since patient acceptance is produced in relation to someone who has a hateful mind, you're practicing patient acceptance with someone who's difficult. It's easy to be patient and accepting with easy people, isn't it? Take your time. Right? The person who's hateful, in relation to one who has a hateful mind, that person should be worthy of deep respect, just like the sacred Dharma, because he is the cause of my patience. So Shantideva, goes a lot into that, and has a lot of verses about difficulties and enemies. Not just, here he's talking specifically about enemies, but he's also talking about any difficulty that you meet on the way. And as I said a few weeks ago, the famous verse of instead of covering the world that's full of thorns with leather, just cut 2 pieces off and put them on your feet, and you'll be able to deal. So too, the enemy, the hateful minds, the difficult people are going to keep coming, uninvited. But the perspective of the spiritual friend is that, as Shantideva said, like this crazy verse, just like a treasure that appeared in my house without any effort on my part. It's like I won the lottery. This difficult person just, arrived. How good for my practice. This is, these are beautiful teachings that require training. I'm not glossing over the fact, and I'm not washing over the effort that's required. But it's the effort of awareness. It's the effort of constant awareness, of simply noticing moment by moment how I want my mind to have wholesome thoughts, and I want to keep those wholesome thoughts, and I want to let go of the unwholesome ones, and I don't want other unwholesome ones to come up. And to notice when somebody is serving as a trigger for unwholesome ones, and instead to change that relationship so that they can trigger wholesome ones, like Shantideva said, of patience. Or if we look, when the Buddha goes and he says to go to visit this house and emulate, meaning try to copy virtue, generosity, faith, and discernment. You copy those things, right? And then when you meet difficulties, you know what you should be doing with your mind. Because otherwise, what do you do? You just react in kind. You mean you react similarly. But here we're being given another way. And the spiritual friend that you have to be for yourself is being able to discern what your mind is doing when, in relationship to whom. What your mind is doing when you relate to other people. Are you being a good friend to yourself, to your own mind? This is the only mind you have. You have to be your best friend. And so you should try to emulate the conviction that you can actually be that friend. So before we finish with a couple of minutes just of silence to end our meeting tonight, meeting our friends. Is there anything someone would like to add to this?
I want to say one sentence. Can you hear me?
I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No, okay. All right, Israel. What's happening?
Just one sentence sounds a bit abstract now about the not self. And I think that the teaching of today is the best implementation of that.
We also cannot hear you so well, so I think maybe you can write it in the chat.
I will write in the chat. Okay.
Daniel, do you see the chat?
I think it's the best implementation of anatta. Hmm? Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Israel. It's very true. You know, anicca anatta dukkha. Okay. Yeah. And I just want to add another way of thinking of that. You know, when we talk about dana and being generous, the first thing we can offer, which is not material, is giving somebody the space to be. You know, not, yeah. Yeah, and not us being selfless. It is true. It is abstract sometimes. But you know that feeling when someone's very generous with their time? You know, when they're giving of their time, meaning like they're just gonna listen to you. Yeah. And we know what that feels like. And we also know that we can give it, that generosity, which is being selfless. You don't need to fill the space with you. You can let them be. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else want to add before we sit?
If there is time, I want to. Sorry, I don't have the video on. The connection is not so good. But I wanted to share a thought and a question. You spoke about seeking out good friends and being a good friend to others. And lately, I've been meeting this side of that I meet in some Buddhist texts and just in general about traditional Buddhist culture, about how deep gender inequality goes. Also with some within the Pali Canon, you know, some texts, even though I try to read them in a very flexible way, it's hard not to see them as being very hurtful and in some ways maybe even possibly harmful towards women, and also in just the different traditional Buddhist countries, Japan, Southeast Asia. I mean, there it's really very, very prominent, the inequality. So I was just wondering about. I know this is a very big thing that we can open up and talk about for a long time, but I'm just wondering, like, how does that fit with all that you've been talking about?
Mm. Mm. Well, it doesn't fit. That's the answer. The short answer is it doesn't fit. I mean, it doesn't fit. Inequality and discrimination doesn't fit. That's the bottom line. But like everything, I mean, Buddhism has not stopped developing. It's in a process of change and development. And so I think the Western influence is a really important one. There's a lot that the East can learn, traditional societies can learn from, more Western equality. And there's a lot that Western approaches can learn in terms of respect and authority, and tradition. So, to find, as we say, that middle way between extremes. So I think that's the challenge, is to, try to take what is helpful and leave what is harmful. It's not as we say, a package deal. You know what I mean? It's not all or nothing. So, it's not to justify any harm or discrimination or misogyny or chauvinism in traditions, but to, try to take out and seek and search for what is really useful and helpful for you. And keep in Zen, the great doubt, which is you're always questioning it, right? But you're questioning it from a place of commitment. You're questioning it from a place of conviction. And then the questioning is fine.
Thank you.
But yeah, causing harm and the Dharma don't go together. And gender inequality is another topic. I mean, another talk, but that's all I could touch on.
Thank you.
I think last year I gave a talk about women in Buddhism. I don't know if you were there, maybe you were away. But yeah, it'd be nice if a woman could give it. Wait, I'm almost done. It'd be nice if a woman could give it. I think a woman should, in our group, give a talk. That's my suggestion to balance this. Like next week. Anyway, I really appreciate you being here, each one of you, because you're my precious spiritual friends. So I want to thank you. So let's finish with 1 minute just to have the silence.